And actually it's my first Schubertiad, so here we are in my living room, a first recital entirely of Lieder by the King of Song himself, Franz Schubert. It is with great excitement that we present this evening. I've wanted to perform this glorious work, Die schöne Müllerin, for years now. It's been preying on my mind. It's one of the great works of art, one of the cornerstones of Western music. And what better place to start with our Schubertiads than with Die schöne Müllerin. I have to make a couple of artistic disclaimers at this point. First of all, our tenor is not feeling 100%. He's suffering from a bit of a cold and he asks your understanding, but he has very kindly agreed to sing on. And second of all, no one performance can do full justice to the infinite beauty that's contained within this cycle. It is my first schöne Müllerin and Stephen's too. It's a great experience for both of us and hopefully for you. But because it is so subtle and there is so much detail and love poured into it by both the poet and the composer, I did want to spend a few minutes kind of running you through the cycle and just give you some things to listen for. Art song is such a glorious but very intimate genre. I think sometimes it's useful to perk up our ears. There's so much going on. I can only give you a very brief skim of the details. There's something in almost every measure of this piece that is a mark of genius. But here are some of the things that I find fascinating. So, first of all, what is it about Schöne Müllerin that makes it such a great piece? Actually, Schöne Müllerin and Winterreise. They're both a collaboration, one of the greatest marriages of words and music ever put to paper. The collaboration between Wilhelm Müller, one of the Romantiker, the German Romantic poets, and Franz Schubert. And there's a mystery about great works of art. Sometimes the greatest works end up surrounded in legend. Now Wilhelm Müller died tragically of a heart attack at the age of 33. Poor Schubert, one of the most prolific composers of all time, pouring out endlessly beautiful music, died at the age of 31, younger than me. It's astounding to think what these people achieved in that time. And Müller gave his name, of course, to the protagonist of this particular cycle, the Müller of the tale, the miller. Müller means miller. So it's fascinating what's going into this cycle. Now, Müller was not the greatest of the Romantiker, of the German Romantic poets. He was a minor poet. He was certainly not an Eichendorff, or a Heine, or a Goethe, or a Schiller, or Brentano, Arnim, none of these names. In fact, this cycle was criticized from its inception for being a little sentimental, a little bit too sickly sweet. And he put disclaimers. There's a postlude, a prelude, and an epilogue, separate poems by Müller, which kind of almost disassociate himself with whether you feel something in the course of the cycle. He's like, okay, I wrote these, but I have nothing to do with them. Take them or leave them. Schubert had other plans for this cycle, and really it became the way that we remember Wilhelm Müller through these two cycles. So, German Romantic poetry was obsessed with nature. It uses, the beginning of the Romantic movement, it uses nature as a metaphor for our emotions, for things that go on. We can't really describe these feelings we have. We don't have words to describe them, so we use the outside world to describe them. And Schubert knew that full well. So what is it about Schubert's writing that makes this so brilliant? Well, I think for any artist, whether a creative or a recreative artist, like myself, a performer, it's a balance between what we call the Dionysiac and the Apollonian elements. Now, big words coming from the gods, but you can use left brain and right brain. One is technique, and one is emotional abandonment and creativity. And when these two elements, technique, which we need to make communication clear, and emotional investment, come together perfectly in works of Mozart and Schubert, then the effect is overwhelming. For many of us, trying to get past technique so that we can lose ourselves in the emotion, or getting too absorbed in the emotion and forgetting about technique, that balancing act happens all of the way through our artistic lives. But for Mozart and Schubert and similar, it seems to come together into this synthesis that is almost miraculous. They couldn't exist without each other. So these songs are perfect not only in how inspired and beautiful the melodies are, and how perfectly the rules of harmony are followed, but also in the way he breaks the rules, and the way he uses the rules. formally, they're extraordinary. It's an essay in writing strophic songs. Strophic song is one where you choose the same music for each verse of poetry. So sometimes the same music is repeated 5 times in a song. Now, for a lesser composer, this means that they get a general atmosphere for the whole song, and then the details of each individual verse are kind of subsumed into the words. But the genius of Schubert, and 9 of these songs are strophic, 1, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 16, and 20. It's an extraordinary feat, and every single verse of poetry is perfect for the music that's written. It's like the music couldn't have existed without the poetry. It's a perfect synthesis. You can find something in every verse of the music that fits the individual text. It's an extraordinary feat. So I'm going to give you a brief wash with some musical examples through the cycle, so you know the kind of thing that we're listening for. So we start our Miller's Tale here at a jaunty stride, and what better place to start a cycle of German Romantic poetry than with Wanderlust, the love of wandering and roving. And Schubert sets off with a healthy kind of march. And the singer sings with this athleticism, these what we call yodel melodies. Athletic, arpeggiotic, built on whole chords and triads. These melodies that express his zest for life and youth and energy. He's fresh-faced. In fact, he's just finished his apprenticeship as a miller, and he's setting out into the wide world to find himself a job as an adult. And in the next song, we find him meeting the next most important character in this beautiful cycle, and that character is the brook. And the brook is most often represented by the piano. And he hears it first. He hears it in the prelude, and it sounds like this. It's just babbling away, and that runs all of the way through the song. Now, this brook is a strange thing, but it's really a representation of the outside world. The miller sings a monologue for this entire cycle, and we get a picture into his head, into his emotions. But the outside world that is looking on is represented by the piano and the musical events that go on without it. And the brook is a protagonist in this. It represents nature. So, as he follows the stream down, we get to the next song, Halt. And whereas the second song started with something that he heard, the third song starts with something that he sees. And what he sees is vital. It holds the whole cycle together. And he sees in the brook, which is now much less of a stream, much less of a trickle, it's more raging. The brook's got a little bit more energy. It's spilled into a river, perhaps. He sees the mill wheels turning. And these mill wheels energize the whole song. They sound like this. Which is quite simply a tonic triad with a sixth. This is vital. This is what makes the cycle hang together. Why does it sound like a mill wheel? Well, it's circular. You can see it turning. And because he's missed out notes in the triad, it's like spokes in the wheel. But this figure, it's fascinating to me how archetypal musical figures like this become subsumed into the overall consciousness of Western art. So this particular figure in the minor energized a previous song of Schubert's, a rather famous one. It goes like this. Eloquently. And this figure, tonic triad plus a sixth, it's the same figure. And it runs through art. Just a couple of examples. They're all over the place. A complete rip-off, the second installment of the Ring Cycle, Die Walküre.